There is a pattern that you know too well. You are familiar with it in a way that it hurts to recognize. It is that moment when you realize, maybe for the 10th time, maybe for the 100th, that the person in front of you is not really interested in you. They are interested in what you can do for them, in what you can offer, in the void that you can fill in their life. And the worst part is not discovering that. The worst part is that you already knew it from the beginning. You felt that pit in your stomach when she showed up asking for something. You noticed that she only calls when needed. You noticed that your conversations always revolve around her problems, never yours. But still, you said yes. You offered your energy, your time, your heart, because there is something in you that believes, almost religiously, that if you are useful enough, helpful enough, generous enough, maybe, just maybe, you will be loved. And Simone Weil, this extraordinary woman who lived only 34 years but saw deeper into human nature than most can in a lifetime. She knew this pattern intimately because she lived it herself. She spent years of her life offering herself completely, working herself to the point of exhaustion, giving herself without limits, believing that her usefulness justified her existence. Until one day she realized something that changed everything. She understood that this pattern of allowing herself to be used was not generosity. It was a deeply distorted way of seeking value. And what she discovered about how to break this cycle goes against everything you've learned about kindness, about compassion, about being a good person. Because Simone Weil realized that learning to say no without blaming yourself, it's not selfish. It's the first step to truly loving. And if these words are touching something raw inside you, something you've been avoiding looking at, something that hurts to acknowledge but that you know is true, then subscribe to this channel now, because we're going to explore together territory that most are afraid to tread. We're going to look directly at the pattern that keeps you trapped in one-sided relationships, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Because what Simone Weil discovered about the nature of use, blame, and love true will completely change not only how you relate to others, but how you understand your own worth. Let's dive together into this painful but necessary journey of learning to say no without carrying the crushing weight of guilt, of understanding why you attract people who use you, and how this is connected to something much deeper than simply choosing poorly. Because the truth is that you are not choosing poorly. You are responding to an old wound that Simone Weil knew well. A wound that makes you believe that your value lies in what you can offer and not in who it is. And this invisible belief is destroying your ability to experience real connection. It is keeping you in an endless cycle of giving and receiving crumbs of attention that you mistake for love. Let's start where it hurts the most. Let's start by looking directly at the pattern, because only when you see clearly what you are doing can you start to choose differently. And Simone Weil knew that seeing clearly is half the transformation, so take a deep breath, because this will hurt before it gets better. But I promise it's worth it. You know exactly how it starts. Someone comes into your life or reappears after months of silence, and suddenly they have a need, a problem that only you can solve, a crisis that needs your specific skill. And there is something in the way they ask, something that makes you feel special, needed, important. They tell you that you are the only person who can help, that no one else understands like you do, that you have a gift for this, and you feel that dangerous heat in your chest, that feeling of being seen, of being valued. So you say yes, you cancel your plans, you stay up late helping with their project, you lend them money they can barely afford to lose, you offer your shoulder, your home, your energy. You empty yourself completely to fill them. And for a moment it works. For a moment you feel that you matter, that you have purpose, that you exist. But then something changes. They get what they needed, and suddenly the messages become more spaced out. The calls stop. They are too busy for that coffee they promised, and you are left there, holding on to the emptiness that is left. After they've extracted everything they needed from you, and the most painful part isn't their absence. It's that voice in your head telling you that maybe if you had done more, if you had been better, more helpful, maybe they would have stayed. Simone Weil knew that pain with a brutal intimacy. She spent years of her short life offering herself completely, working in factories despite having a privileged education because she wanted to understand the suffering. That of the workers participating in the Spanish Civil War, even though she was physically frail, because she believed she should share the burden of others, refusing food during the Second World War because she didn't want to eat more than her compatriots under Nazi occupation were eating. She gave in so completely that she literally starved to death at the age of 34. And for a long time people romanticized this, called it holiness, a noble sacrifice. But Weil herself began to understand, in the last years of her life, that there was something deeply problematic about this pattern of limitless self-giving. She realized that it wasn't pure love that moved her. It was something much more complicated, much more human, much more wounded. So let's stop for a second and look honestly at what is happening when you repeatedly attract people who use you. Because there is a lie that you probably believe. The lie is that you are simply unlucky, that you keep choosing the wrong people, that there is something broken in your radar that makes you attract narcissists, users, profiteers. But Simone Weil saw deeper. She understood that the pattern doesn't start with the people who use you. It starts with something in you, something that is transmitting an invisible but powerful signal to the world. That signal, it says, my value is in what I can do for you. This signal says, I have no right to take up space simply by existing. I need to justify myself through my usefulness. This signal says, please use me, because if you use me, that means I matter. And people who are looking for someone to use, consciously or unconsciously, they pick up on this signal. They feel this eager availability, this readiness to sacrifice. And they come, not necessarily because they are bad people, but because you are offering exactly what they are looking for. Someone who will say yes without limits. Someone who will empty themselves to fulfill them. Someone who won't make real demands for reciprocity because they don't even believe they deserve reciprocity. And here's the part that really hurts to recognize, the part that Simone Weil had to face in herself. You are not an innocent victim in this pattern. You are an active participant. You are choosing people who use you because, as painful as it is to be used, it is more familiar, more comfortable, safer than risking being loved by who you really are. Because if someone uses you, you know where you stand, you know you are useful, you have a clear role. But if someone tried to love you simply for existing without needing anything from you, that would be terrifying. Because then you would have to face the question that you spend your whole life avoiding. Who am I when I am not being useful? What is my worth when I am not solving anyone's problems? Do I deserve love simply for existing? Or do I need to continually justify myself through what I can offer? And these questions are so scary that you unconsciously prefer to remain in the familiar pattern of be used. At least there you know who you are. You are the savior, the helpful one, the one who always helps, even if it is slowly destroying you inside. Simone Weil came to a devastating but liberating understanding. She realized that when you allow yourself to be used without limits, you are not practicing true love. You are practicing a distorted form of love that she called gravitational love. It is love that comes from need, from fear, from emptiness. It is love that seeks to fill a hole inside you, using the need of another. You feel necessary, therefore you exist. You feel useful, therefore you have value. But this type of love, well realized, does not free anyone, neither you nor the person that you are helping, because you are not really seeing the other person. You are using their need to feed your sense of worth. They need you, and that makes you feel important. And when they stop needing, when they move, when they grow beyond your help, you feel panic, you feel abandonment, because your entire identity was built around being needed. And here is the brutal paradox that Weil identified. The more you offer yourself without limits, the more you perpetuate the dynamic of use, because you are teaching people that their value is in what you can do for them. You are confirming through your actions that you have no right to say no, that your needs don't matter as much as their needs, that you exist to serve, and people, even good people, will eventually treat you exactly as you are treating yourself, with casual disregard for your boundaries, for your time, for your energy, for your humanity. So the pattern perpetuates itself. You attract people who use you because you are offering use. You are signaling limitless availability. You are conveying the message that it is safe for you to explore because you will never complain. You will never demand reciprocity. You will never say that small but powerful word, no. And now we come to the heart of the problem, to the wound that Simone Weil has spent years exploring. Why is it so impossible for you to say no? Why, even when you know you are being used, even when you feel the resentment building, even when you are exhausted and empty, you keep saying yes, and the answer has everything to do with guilt. You carry a crushing weight of guilt every time you consider saying no. That guilt comes from so many places. Maybe it comes from your childhood, where your value was conditioned to be good, helpful, not cause trouble. Maybe it comes from religious messages about sacrifice and selflessness. Perhaps it comes from experiences where you have seen people punished or abandoned for having needs, for setting limits, for not being useful enough. So you have internalized this deep belief. Saying no is selfish. Saying no is cruel. Saying no means you don't care. Saying no will make people abandon you. And that guilt is so powerful that you would rather destroy yourself than feel it. You would rather say yes when every cell in your body is screaming no. You would rather empty yourself completely than risk terrifying feeling of guilt that comes when you put your needs before someone else's needs. Simone Weil understood this guilt in a visceral way. She herself struggled with it her entire life. She felt guilty for having educational privilege when workers did not. Guilty for having food when others were starving. Guilty for being alive when others were dying. And this guilt took her to destructive extremes. She literally killed herself through refusing to care for herself. And only towards the end of her life did she begin to question whether this guilt was whether it was really virtue or whether it was something much more problematic. She began to realize that excessive guilt is actually a form of disguised pride. Because when you feel guilty about saying no, you are implicitly saying that you are so important, so necessary, so indispensable that your refusal will destroy the other person. You are putting an enormous weight on your own shoulders. You are making yourself responsible for the well-being of everyone around you, and that, Weil realized, is not humility. It is a subtle form of megalomania. It is believing that you are the savior, that without you, people will fall apart, that you carry the world on your shoulders. But here's what Simone Weil discovered that changes everything. Saying no without guilt is not abandonment. It's the first act of true love, both for yourself and for the other person. Because when you say yes from a place of guilt, of fear, of needing to be needed, you're not really giving anything. You're making a transaction. I give you this, and in return you make me feel like I exist. You make me feel important. You make me feel like I have value. But when you learn to say no without guilt, when you establish clear boundaries from a place of clarity and not fear, you are doing something revolutionary. You are saying, I have value regardless of what I can do for you. You are saying, my needs are as legitimate as yours. You are saying, I trust that you are able to find resources in yourself or elsewhere. I don't need to sacrifice myself for you to survive. And this, Weil realized, is much more respectful than sacrifice without limits. Because when you sacrifice without limits, you are implicitly saying that the another person is too weak to care for themselves. You are infantilizing them. You are assuming that without you they are lost. But when you say no clearly, you are treating the other person as a capable adult. You are trusting their resilience. You are allowing them to grow through not having all their needs immediately met by you, and that is true love. Love that liberates instead of imprisoning. Love that trusts instead of controlling. Love that respects the other's ability to find their own way. Simone Weil called this type of love decreated love. It was love that didn't come from the ego with its needs and fears. It was love that emerged when you managed to empty yourself of the desire to be needed, the desire to be important, the desire to be the savior. And here is where her philosophy becomes radically practical, because decreation is not just an abstract concept. It is the daily practice of observing the impulses that make you say yes when you should be saying no. It is the practice of noticing that tightness in your chest when you consider establishing a limit. It is the practice of recognizing guilt as a sign, not that you are doing something wrong, but that you are finally doing something different, something that defies years of conditioning, something that goes against the identity you share. It was built around being useful, being helpful, being that which is always there, and Weil understood that this practice was going to be painful. It was going to feel like betrayal. It was going to bring up deep fears of abandonment, of rejection, of discovering that without your usefulness, you have nothing to offer. But she also knew that this was the only path to true love, because you can't truly love while you're desperate for validation. You can't genuinely connect while you're using another to fill your emptiness. You can't have real reciprocity as long as he is willing to accept crumbs in exchange for the feasts you offer. So how do you start? How do you break a pattern that has probably been operating for years, maybe decades, maybe your entire life? Simone Weil didn't offer easy solutions. She didn't believe in 5 steps to transformation. She believed in radical mindfulness, in looking honestly at what's going on inside you. And here's your first practice. The next time someone asks you for something, before you automatically respond with yes, stop, breathe, and notice what comes up in your body. Do you feel that familiar grip of guilt, that fear of disappointing, that automatic impulse? To be useful, just observe, don't judge, don't try to change, just see clearly what is operating. Well called this pure attention. It is the ability to look at your own patterns without identifying with them, without making them your identity. And in the space created by that attention, something new can emerge. Perhaps you will discover that you can say, "Let me think and I will get back to you," instead of responding immediately. Perhaps you will discover that you can say, "I would love to help, but now is not a good time for me," without offering elaborate justification. Perhaps you will discover that you can simply say no and survive the guilt that comes after, because here is the secret that no one told you. Guilt will not kill you. Guilt is just an uncomfortable feeling. It is like a muscle that hurts when you use it in a new way. It means that you are growing, not that you are doing something wrong. And the next practice is even more radical. Start observing the quality of your relationships. Who is there when you have nothing to offer? Who seeks you out when you are vulnerable and in need of support instead of providing support? Who is genuinely interested in you as a complete person and not just in your skills or resources? And be brutally honest with what you see. Maybe you will discover that many of your relationships are one-sided. Maybe you will discover that you have been giving much more than you have been receiving. Maybe you will discover that you have built your entire social life around being useful, and that when you stop being useful, people disappear. And that will hurt. That will make you question everything. But Weil would say that this pain is necessary. It is pain that cleanses. It is pain that reveals truth, because you cannot build something real on a false foundation. You can't have genuine connections while you're operating from the fear of not being loved for who you are. And now I need to tell you where you are watching this video from, what corner of the world you are looking for these words about limits, about guilt, about breaking patterns of being used. Leave in the comments your city, your country, because there is something deeply comforting in knowing that right now, as you read these words, there are other souls around the planet struggling with the same pattern, carrying the same guilt, trying to learn the same impossible lesson of saying no without tearing themselves up inside. And maybe Simone Weil, wherever she is right now, would be smiling to know that your insights continue to help people break free from the prison of being helpful. So tell me, where do you watch from? And now let's go deeper. Because understanding the pattern is just the beginning. The real transformation happens when you start to see where that pattern comes from. And that takes us to the next layer of discovery. Weil realized that when you have a pattern of allowing yourself to be used, there is almost always a childhood wound operating. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, where you only received attention, approval, affection when you were being good, helpful, not causing problems. Perhaps you had parents who were so overwhelmed, so needy, so fragile that you learned from an early age that your role was to care for them rather than be cared for. Perhaps you had to grow up too quickly, take on responsibilities that weren't yours. Become an adult before your time because the adults around you weren't available. And in that process, you internalized a devastating message. You have no right to have needs. You exist to serve. Your value is in what you can do for others. And that message became so deeply buried in your nervous system that you now operate automatically. You don't even realize you're doing it. It's like breathing. You just keep offering yourself. Keep saying yes. Keep emptying yourself to fill others. Because that's what you've learned love is. That's what you've learned connection is. That's what you've learned your value requires. But Simone Weil had a different view of love. She believed that true love, what she called supernatural love, as opposed to gravitational love, does not come from need, but from abundance, does not come from emptiness, but from fullness, does not seek to fill a hole, but overflows naturally. And you cannot love like that while you are operating from a place of lack, of fear, of the belief that you need to justify yourself through usefulness. So the deep work that Weil did in herself, and that she invites us to do, is to identify that wound. It is look honestly at the child you were, and recognize that that child didn't get the message she needed to hear. The message that you are lovable simply for existing, that your needs matter, that you don't need to earn love through performance. And this isn't about blaming your parents or holding people from your past accountable. It's about seeing clearly how the pattern has formed so that you can start to choose differently. Because until you see the wound, until you understand where this compulsive impulse to serve comes from, you will keep repeating the pattern. You will keep attracting people who use you. You will keep saying yes when you want to say no. You will keep emptying yourself and then wondering why no one is filling you back. And the answer is because you have taught people that you don't need to be filled, that you are okay with being empty, that your role is to give and never receive, that you are the bottomless pit that never needs water because you are always providing water for everyone else. But Weil knew this is unsustainable. She knew it in her own flesh because she lived this standard until the extreme, and he literally killed her. And towards the end of her life, she began to write about the need to set limits, about the right to preserve oneself, about the distinction between sacred sacrifice and self-destruction masquerading as virtue. And here is where we enter the third layer of understanding, the deepest and perhaps the most difficult to accept. Simone Weil realized that learning to say no without guilt is not just about setting practical limits. It is about fundamental transformation of how you understand your own value. It is about moving from utility-based value system to existence-based value system. As long as you believe that your value comes from what you do, you will never be able to say no without devastating guilt, because saying no means admitting that you are not useful in that moment. And if you are not useful, whoever you are nothing. You are disposable. You are worthless. So you have to say yes. You have no choice. But if you can make that radical change, if you can start to believe, even if only intellectually at first, that you have value simply by existing, that you deserve to take up space simply by being alive, that your needs are legitimate, not because you have earned the right to have them, but because you are a human being and human beings have needs, then saying no becomes possible. It is still difficult. It still brings discomfort, but it doesn't bring that crushing guilt because you are no longer equating your no with your unworthiness. You are simply recognizing your limits, and Weil had a beautiful word for this. She called it decreation. It was the process of undoing the false self that you have built around being useful, being needed, being the savior, to reveal the true self that exists simply because it exists, without the need for justification, without the need for performance, without the need to be anything other than what you are. But how do you practice this decreation? How do you undo years of conditioning that has taught you that you are only worth what you can offer? Simone Weil offered specific practices. The first is practice of attention to emptiness. When you feel that urgent urge to say yes, to offer yourself, to solve someone's problem, stop and ask yourself, am I doing this because I genuinely want to and I have the resources to do it? Or am I doing this because I cannot bear the emptiness of not being needed? Am I doing this from a place of plenitude or from a place of lack? And be honest with the answer. If you are doing it coming from a lack, coming from a need to feel important, allow yourself to feel the emptiness that arises when you don't say yes. Don't try to fill it. Don't try to escape it. Just sit with it, breathe through it, observe it without judgment. We'll call this waiting. It is the ability to stay in the emptiness without trying to fill it compulsively. And at first it will be unbearable. You will feel increasing anxiety. I feel that voice saying that you have to do something, you have to be useful, you have to prove your worth. But if you manage to stay with the emptiness, if you manage not to act compulsively, something extraordinary begins to happen. You begin to realize that the emptiness does not destroy you. You survive it. You continue to exist even when you are not being useful. And this perception, however simple it may seem, is revolutionary because it breaks the equation that has governed your life. You do not need to be useful to exist. You exist, and that is enough. The second practice that Weil suggested is the practice of observing people who genuinely love you, not the people who use you, but those rare people who stay when you can't offer anything, who call to ask how you are and really want to know, who respect your boundaries without making you feel guilty, who celebrate when you say no because they understand that you are looking out for yourself. Observe these people. Study how they relate to you. Notice that they don't love you more when you are useful and less when you are not. They simply love you. They love, constantly, without conditions. And this is living proof that true love is not based on utility. It is based on something much more fundamental. It is based on recognition of shared humanity, on respect for your intrinsic dignity, on appreciation of who you are and not what you do. And if you pay attention to these people, you will notice something else. They also set limits. They also say no when they need to. They also take care of themselves. And the relationship does not fall apart. In fact, it is stronger precisely because there is real reciprocity, because no one is being used, because both are choosing to be present from a place of freedom and not need. Weil would say that these relationships are a model of decreed love. Love that does not come from emptiness, but from plenitude. Love that does not seek to fill need, but simply to share existence. And the third practice, perhaps the most difficult, is the practice of letting people go when they are just using you. Simone Weil realized that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and for the other person, is to stop allowing the use, is to set clear boundaries and keep that boundary even when the person gets upset, even when they accuse you of selfishness, even when they tell you that you've changed, that you used to be helpful, that you don't care anymore. Because here's the brutal truth. People who actually care about you. Lovers will respect your limits. They may not like you initially. They may need time to adjust, but they will eventually understand and respect you. But people who are just using you will fiercely resist your limits. They will try to make you feel guilty. They will use emotional manipulation. They will accuse you of being selfish, cold, heartless, and this will confirm what you suspected, but were afraid to admit. They were not interested in you. They were interested in what you could do for them, and when you stop doing them, when you set limits, they reveal their true nature, and it hurts to see this. It will hurt to lose people. But Weil would say that you are not really losing anything, because connection based on use is not real connection. It is transaction. It is exploitation disguised as a relationship. And letting these people go is not cruelty. It is honesty. It is stopping participating in a dynamic that was hurting both of them. You because you were emptying yourself, her because she was learning that she can use people without consequences. But now we need to talk about guilt, because even when you intellectually understand all of this, even when you clearly see the pattern, even when you know that you need to set limits, when the moment comes to actually say no, the guilt comes like a devastating wave, and this guilt is not rational. It does not respond to logic. It comes from a much deeper place, a place where that scared child still believes that saying no means being abandoned. It means losing love. It means discovering that you are worthless. So how do you deal with that guilt? How do you say no and survive the emotional tsunami that comes later? Simone Weil had a radical answer. She said that you don't try to eliminate guilt, you learn to carry it with attention. You watch the guilt arise, you feel it in your body, the tightness in your chest, the knot in your stomach, the tension in your shoulders. You recognize that it's just sensation, it's just emotion. It's uncomfortable but not dangerous. You won't die of guilt, you'll just feel discomfort for a while. And here's the crucial part. You don't act based on guilt. You feel the guilt and maintain your limit anyway, because acting based on guilt is reinforcing the pattern. It is teaching your nervous system that guilt is a sign that you are doing something wrong. But if you feel the guilt and maintain the limit, you are teaching something new. You are teaching that guilt is just old emotion reacting to new behavior. It is not a reliable guide to morality. It is not an indicator that you are being a bad person. It is simply resistance to growth. It is part of you that is attached to the old pattern and is fighting to keep things the way they were. Weil practiced what she called objectless attention. It was the ability to observe your own emotions, including guilt, without identifying with them, without making them your identity, without believing that because you feel guilt you are a guilty person. There is a subtle but profound difference between I feel guilt and I am guilty. The first recognizes emotion as a temporary experience. The second transforms emotion into identity. And when you manage to maintain this distinction, when you manage to observe guilt without becoming it, something extraordinary happens. Guilt loses its power over you. It can arise, it can be intense, it can be uncomfortable, but it no longer controls you. You can feel guilt and still maintain your no. You can carry the discomfort of guilt and still honor your needs. You can survive the emotional storm and discover that on the other side, you are still whole. You have not been destroyed. You have not been abandoned. You have simply set a healthy boundary, and the world has not ended. And every time you do that, every time you maintain boundary despite the guilt, you are reprogramming your nervous system. You are creating new pattern. You are proving to that scared child inside you that it is possible to have needs, to set limits, to say no, and still be loved, still have value, still belong. And now we come to the most beautiful and difficult paradox of Simone Weil's philosophy. She discovered that when you finally learn to say no without guilt, when you set healthy boundaries, when you stop allowing yourself to be used, something unexpected happens. You become able to love in a much deeper and more genuine way, because now when you say yes, when you offer help, when you give of yourself, it is not coming from a place of need, but from a place of choice. It is not coming from a place of fear of abandonment, but a genuine desire to contribute. It is not coming from compulsion, but from freedom. And this kind of giving, while called supernatural love, is love that doesn't seek anything in return, doesn't need validation, isn't trying to fill a void. It's pure love in the sense that it flows naturally from someone who is whole, who knows their own worth, who has set healthy boundaries and therefore can give out of abundance and not out of lack. And ironically, when you love like that, when you relate like that, you stop attracting people who use you, because the signal you're sending has completely changed. You're no longer signaling, I need to be needed. You are signaling, I am whole and I am choosing to share. You are no longer signaling, use me because that is how I gain value. You are signaling, I have clear boundaries and mutual respect is non-negotiable. And people who are looking for someone to use will feel this and will look elsewhere. But people who are capable of real reciprocity, of genuine connection, of love that honors boundaries, these people will be attracted to you because they recognize in you something that they are also seeking, relationship-based. In mutual choice and not in desperate need, a relationship where both can be complete humans with needs and limits. A relationship where no one is a savior and no one needs saving. Simone Weil lived only 34 years, but in that short time she explored depths of human experience that most avoid looking at. She experienced extreme poverty working in factories. She faced real danger in the Spanish Civil War. She experienced profound loneliness and constant misunderstanding. She carried severe headaches that never left her. She struggled with the pattern we are exploring, the pattern of giving without limit, of allowing herself to be used, of believing that her value lay in her usefulness, and that pattern literally killed her. She died of malnutrition because she refused to eat more than her compatriots under Nazi occupation were eating, because she believed she had no right to have needs when others were suffering. And there are those who romanticize this as holiness. But looking honestly, we can see that it was extreme manifestation of destructive pattern. It was inability to set limits, even when life depended on it. But here is what makes Simone Weil extraordinary. Even as she struggled with this pattern, even as she failed to apply her own insights to her own life, she was seeing clearly. She was writing about the need for limits, about the distinction between true love and self-destruction, about the right to preserve oneself. She could not save herself, but her words have saved me. Countless others, and perhaps this is the ultimate lesson. Transformation is not perfect. You don't wake up one day completely cured of the pattern of allowing yourself to be used. You will relapse. You will have moments when you say yes when you should say no. There will be moments when the guilt wins and you give in, but each time you see the pattern a little more clearly. Each time you maintain a boundary, even if imperfectly. Each time you survive the guilt and discover that you are still whole, you are changing. Slowly, gradually, you are becoming a person who knows their value, who honors their needs, who understands that saying no is not selfishness, but necessary self-preservation. And so here we are, at the end of this journey through the pain of being used, through the guilt of saying no, through the transformation of learning that your value is not in what you can offer, but in who you are. And I want you to know, if you've made it this far, if you've read every word trying to understand this pattern that has been governing your life, you have already begun the change, because seeing is the first step to transformation. Recognizing the pattern is half the work. And now you see how you attract people who use you because you are signaling unlimited availability. You see how guilt keeps you stuck saying yes when you want to say no. You see how your worth has been conditioned to be useful, and how it is destroying your ability to have real connections, and seeing it hurts. Seeing it clearly is almost unbearable because it means recognizing how many years you have wasted, how many relationships you have allowed to be one-sided, how many times you have emptied yourself to fill others when no one was filling you. But Simone Weil would say that this pain is good. It is pain that cleanses. It is pain that reveals truth. It is pain that precedes growth. So don't run away from this pain. Don't try to minimize or rationalize it. Sit with it. Breathe through it. Let it teach you what you need to learn. And if you felt that something changed within you during this time we spent together, if some truth here resonated with a deep part of your soul that you barely knew existed, then leave a like on this video, because it shows me that these words are reaching those who really need them, those who have the courage to look at destructive patterns instead of continuing repeating them blindly. And subscribe to the channel as we continue this journey of transformation, because there are others who are walking this same path of learning to set limits, of learning to say no without devastating guilt. And you don't have to walk alone. We are here, exploring these difficult truths together, honoring the courage it takes to change lifelong patterns. The choice is yours now. You can continue as you are, continuing to attract people who use you, continuing to say yes when your whole being is screaming no, continuing to carry crushing guilt every time you dare to be in need. Or you can begin the slow and difficult work of transformation, of decreation, as Weil called it, of undoing the false self built around being useful to reveal the true self that has value simply by existing. It will not be easy. You will fail many times. You will have moments of relapse. There will be days when that guilt wins and you give in. But every time you practice, every time you say no and survive, every time you maintain a boundary despite discomfort, you are creating new pattern. You are reprogramming old nervous system. You are proving to yourself that it is possible to exist without being constantly useful, that you deserve love without having to earn it through performance, that your needs are as legitimate as the needs of any other human being. And slowly, gradually, you will notice change. You will notice that you are attracting people. Different. People who respect your limits. People who offer real reciprocity. People who value you for who you are and not for what you can do for them. And you will look back and see how much you have grown, how much you have changed, how much more whole, more true, more free you have become. Simone Weil once wrote, in her own words that I will translate from the spirit and not the letter, that absolute attention is prayer. It is the only true act of generosity, because when you pay true attention to yourself, when you really see your patterns, your fears, your wounds, when you observe without judgment how you have allowed yourself to be used, you are practicing the purest form of love. You are telling the wounded child inside you that you see it, that you recognize it, that you will no longer abandon it in search of external validation. You will finally give her what she has always needed, recognition that she is worthy of love simply by existing, that she does not need to earn her place in the world through constant usefulness, that she can rest, can have needs. You can say no and still be loved, still have value, still belong. And that, in the end, is what we are all seeking. Not the absence of pain, but the ability to exist authentically. Not the elimination of guilt, but the courage to act with integrity despite the guilt. Not perfection, but constant growth toward being who we truly are. And Simone Weil, with her brief but intensely lived life, showed us that it is possible, it is difficult, it is painful, you will stumble, but it is possible. You can learn to say no without blame. You can break the pattern of attracting people who use you. You can discover your intrinsic value that does not depend on performance or usefulness. You can, and if you are reading this, if something here has touched you deeply, you have already started. So keep going, keep looking, keep practicing, keep growing, because the world needs you whole, not emptied. It needs you with healthy boundaries, not available to be used. It needs your genuine presence, not your constant performance. You are not alone on this journey, and the transformation you seek, for as impossible as it may seem now, it's closer than you imagine. One no at a time, one limit at a time, one choice to honor yourself at a time. You are changing, you are growing, you are becoming who you were always meant to be. Someone who knows deep down that your worth does not need to be earned because it already exists, complete and untouchable, just waiting to be recognized.